Hi, my name is Diane Bada. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about asynchronous development and how it's seen in gifted individuals. This isn't really something that is spoken about too much, and I thought it would be a helpful video as a result. Many times people can assume that if an individual is really bright, that they don't really face challenges in other areas of their lives. For a long time, actually, the research and the instruction that was given to students in counseling or psychology programs reinforced that. They're basically encouraged to really not worry about gifted individuals or gifted kids because everything's going to be just fine. Actually, this is not necessarily true, and it is often the opposite. Because an individual does develop more quickly cognitively or intellectually, it can make it even more difficult for them to understand their emotions or understand certain social experiences. That can also relate to increased sensitivity that's often seen in a lot of gifted kids. So in short, I wanted to make a video that explored this topic a little bit. Okay, let's get into this a little bit. So what exactly do we mean by asynchronous development? In short, it's pretty simple. Essentially, that is the term that is used when we see a child's development not really progressing at the same rate. So in a gifted kid, you may see incredible cognitive ability, incredible intellectual and problem-solving ability at a really young age. So if they are 6 years old, first grade, they may actually be able to do work that would be typically given to somebody who's in the 5th grade or beyond. So usually gifted kids, their intellectual development is far beyond what is the norm for their age group. However, often you see in these kids that their emotional maturity, their social intelligence or development is at the same as everybody else their age, or the same for the norm, or maybe even a little bit behind. And this can create a lot of challenges and difficulties with understanding why other kids might behave a certain way, understanding why other kids don't share their interests. And so this is how asynchronous development can end up feeding into some emotional struggles at times. Okay, what does it tend to look like? How does it show up? So asynchronous development can show up in a few different ways. One way is in the disparity between cognitive development and emotional development. So as I just mentioned, gifted kids typically are pretty advanced when it comes to maybe math skills, reading ability, etc. It's not uncommon to see kids doing work that would be given to somebody a few grades above them, or even beyond that. However, because they're still kids and they do not have the emotional development that is seen in a teenager or an adult, they might have difficulty understanding their emotions, understanding how to manage those emotions. This may be seen in poor frustration tolerance, misunderstandings, getting very upset by something that another kid did, getting upset by something that a teacher did. And of course, this is what you would expect from a kid, but sometimes because a child might be intellectually advanced, adults then might not understand why this kid is acting up or behaving in a way that another kid might. But this asynchronous development is one thing that explains that. Another area where asynchronous development can be seen often is in terms of social development. So again, this child might be very advanced intellectually, able to grasp concepts really quickly, memorize a lot of information without really even trying. These are common things that you see in gifted kids. However, they may find it challenging to relate to other kids their own age, especially if those kids don't share their interests or don't show the same level of excitement about certain topics. As a result of this, it can be challenging for these kids to form friendships sometimes. If they're involved in an activity that they're very interested in, sometimes that can be an easier way for them to connect with other kids. But if these kids are not really in a gifted class or exposed to other children who are similar, it can be very hard for them to feel like they fit in, because other kids might see them as different or weird, or may even feel a little bit threatened by them. And so that can lead to sometimes bullying, or sometimes maybe just frustration with not understanding why other kids don't share the same level of excitement or interest as they do. Another area where asynchronous development can show up relates to heightened sensitivities. So this can be related to emotional sensitivity. It can also be in terms of sensory processing or sensory sensitivity. Gifted kids and adults are often very sensitive. And for kids, especially who don't have the advantage of years of wisdom and life experience, they can have a hard time managing their emotions, as I mentioned earlier. One way that sensory sensitivity or physical sensitivity can show up is in frustration with tags on clothing or certain fabrics. I remember years ago I worked with a kid who would not wear certain pants, and obviously it was very frustrating for their parents. And this is something that is actually very common to see in kids who are gifted, just being hypersensitive to things that might not bother somebody else. And as adults, this can be a great gift. Kids who are very sensitive to sound, for instance, may be great musicians, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly when a parent is seeing this in their child, it can be very confusing, sometimes very frustrating, and lead to challenges, especially if there is a lot of emotional sensitivity and the child frequently feels hurt or misunderstood. Okay, what are some of the impacts of asynchronous development? So what does it tend to result in? One major thing that asynchronous development can result in is social isolation, loneliness. Gifted kids, as I mentioned before, can have a lot of interests that they're very, very passionate about. But if they feel that other kids don't quite share the same interests, it can lead to feeling very disconnected, feeling misunderstood, and feeling very lonely. Another major impact can be emotional challenges. So again, because gifted kids often experience everything intensely, they can struggle to understand and also struggle to manage the feelings that do come up. So a gifted kid who is anxious or nervous about something may experience that anxiety at an extremely high level. It may result in outbursts, tantrums, issues at home, being very combative. And this can be a little bit scary to parents sometimes. Generally, this will improve over time. But for a child who's maybe 8 years old or 7 years old, they are still not really equipped with the tools to understand how to manage those emotions. And it can lead to some challenges if those emotions do come up as a result. Another impact can be perfectionism, self-criticism, self-doubt. When a child is accustomed to being really good at something or getting a concept immediately, if they find that there's an area where that is not the case, they can become extremely self-critical and can be very hard on themselves, because children often do not have ability to see things in a very nuanced way as well. This can lead to a lot of black and white thinking that then fuels perfectionism. Feeling if they are not scoring 100 or 99 on everything, then they're doing terribly. And obviously adults are generally better at seeing more gray areas or seeing more nuance, but for kids it can be a little bit harder, and they have less life experience to pull from when it comes to it. Another area or another impact of asynchronous development: discrepancies between academic achievement and social achievement. So again, a very bright child might do super well on tests, might do super well when it comes to recall of facts, maybe an extremely motivated student, extremely engaged student, but that does not necessarily carry over into social settings. As I mentioned before, if a child is not in a gifted program or in a classroom where teachers really understand how they are wired a little bit differently, it can lead to a lot of challenges. Sometimes they can get really bored. Sometimes they can act out as a result of boredom, or they might just feel that their peers don't really understand why they get upset about certain things or frustrated so readily. So that's another potential impact. Okay, what are some strategies that can be used to support gifted kids and help to mitigate the impact of this asynchronous development? One can be to do a little bit to foster the development of emotional intelligence. So, of course, emotional intelligence is something that develops with time, with age. It's not something that can really be rushed, but parents can help their gifted kids by providing opportunities For emotional expression, for self-reflection, parents can help kids with naming what they're feeling, helping them describe how the feeling came up, when it felt better, how it felt better. Going through mindfulness exercises or relaxation techniques with kids can be another really good way of teaching emotional regulation skills. Social skill development, encouraging kids, especially gifted kids, to connect with other kids who share their interests. So maybe there's a kid is very into bird watching, for instance. Maybe there's a club or a group that meets on the weekends that a parent can go with to their child. This can help that child realize that they're not alone and there are other people who share those same interests. Another thing that's very important for parents and teachers to do is to provide appropriate challenges. So if a gifted kid is not feeling challenged, they can act out, they can get super bored, they can refuse to do assignments, etc. So sometimes kids who are really bright end up being labeled lazy or dumb when they are anything but that. But if they don't feel motivated or they don't feel stimulated by the work that they're getting, it may look like they do not have the capacity to do it when it is in fact the opposite. And one thing that obviously is very important then is to make sure that kids who are gifted are being challenged adequately. So this can look like putting a child in a gifted program, working with teachers to make sure that they are being pushed and to pursue advanced learning or an advanced curriculum if it is indicated. That can be very helpful. Just in helping a child feel that they are being properly stimulated. Lastly, another thing that's very important is to promote just a growth mindset. Kids, because they lack the life experience that adults have, can have a hard time with setbacks, with instances of rejection. Maybe for gifted kids, this can come up a lot socially. It may come up if they lose a game or a competition or something like that. Parents who focus on teaching children the importance of persevering, of putting an effort, of using a setback as an opportunity to grow, are going to see that their child develops a greater sense of grit, a greater sense of resilience in the long run. Some of that will also come with time, but again, we want to encourage kids to learn these things gradually when they're younger as well. Okay, overall, that's a bit of an overview of asynchronous development, what it is, different ways that it can show up, and also some different tools or interventions that can be used to improve it. I hope that this video was helpful. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.